This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, welcome to Mesoamerica Mist, but in space.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show. We're putting the humanities back into science fiction. My name is Gepwin, and I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi.
This is it. This is, the penultimate episode of the animated series, so we're in the home stretch here. Getting there. Also, the best episode of either original or animated series, because it is the only one to have ever won an Emmy.
Hooray! So, Hugo Awards don't count, right?
No, this is
Okay,
TV awards.
TV Awards, okay, good. Award-winning episode of Star Trek the Animated Series. Something about serpents and teeth, right?
Yep, this is How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth. Of course, from the Shakespeare quote. Let's see, I cannot remember which it's from. King Lear, apparently. There we go.
No, I've never read King Lear. I should probably fix that at some point.
How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child.
Isn't that like most of the plot, though?
Yeah. Sounds like something a dad would say.
My kids suck and everyone's terrible.
Yep. My kid doesn't appreciate me and it hurts me like snakes. It hurts me like snakes.
I'm gonna go kick it up now. They're like biting the hand that feeds, except they're snakes too.
Yeah, which they do that. They're snakes.
They're hungry. Anyway.
This episode was written by Russell Bates, who was mentored by Gene L. Kuhn. He started writing when he was in the hospital with an injury during his time with the Air Force. He is one of the few Native American writers to write for Star Trek. He wrote in a Native American crew member for this episode, as well as the episode including a lot of themes from Native American cultures.
Oh, it's all kind of tying together a bit here.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he doesn't have too many other credits other than this.
No, he did have one, the something of the jungle. I forgot to write it down because its original name was it was like translated from Spanish, I think. The original was a weird Spanish movie about gorillas.
Freddy of the Jungle.
It's supposed to be like a weird sort of Tarzan parody, but told from the woman's point of view. Couldn't find much information about it otherwise.
Apparently, in Freddy of the Jungle, he played Chief Follows Nose.
Okay, then. Glad we got
Toucan
our
Sam.
good old racist stuff in there somewhere.
Moving on.
Toucan Sam and Redface. Oof. Anyway, also co-written by David Wise, who apparently went to writers' workshop things, was taught how to write science fiction by just the greats of the time, apparently, according to everything I've read. I'm unclear how mentored they were, but anyway.
So like 13 clones of Isaac Asimov?
Yes. Or more specifically, Ursula K. Le Guin, Frank Herbert, Harlan Ellison, that kind of people.
They have a whole number of credits to their writing credits there, including episodes of like Speed Racer, Batman the Animated Series. Wait, he wrote The Clock King? Neat.
Yeah, let's see, Buck Rogers, Wonder Woman, He-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transformers, my personal favorites, Chippendale's Rescue Rangers,
Oh yeah,
and the Mighty Ducks cartoon show.
forgot that was a thing.
It was so well. Okay, so I was just looking this up again. So you have the Mighty Ducks, which everyone remembers is the super successful sports movie for kids, the hockey movie for children about the misfit group of children that play hockey and are able to pull together to win the hockey game. And they're like, how do we make a TV spinoff to capitalize on the success of our very successful child sports movie? So what we're going to do is make a cartoon about hockey-playing alien ducks that come to Earth to play hockey and defend Earth from the evil aliens that are coming to invade to steal their magic hockey gear.
Yep. Because that's totally the connection that is being made from that, fully live action hockey movie there.
Yeah, so they took hockey and the word ducks and turned it into science fiction cartoon show.
Yes. Well, I guess it worked for Street Sharks.
It did. The other thing is this is also Disney, so it's another duck cartoon from Disney, but these ducks are just aliens. They have nothing to do with their other canonical Disney duck shows.
Yes.
Because this was on, I forget if it was at the same time or soon after the original DuckTales and Darkwing Duck.
It was mid-90s, I believe, for the Mighty Ducks animated series there.
Yeah, so I think I'm forgetting when Darkwing Duck ended. So it was either around the same time or right after.
So everything's turning up quackers.
Mm-hmm. I cannot express just like, also this was one of my favorite cartoons as a kid for some reason. Because I hate sports. I've never in my life played or even observed hockey. But for some reason I just loved this show.
Well, maybe real life hockey needs to be more like the show there.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'd be all about it.
This is just complete aside. Maybe we'll do the made for TV movie of this sometime. But one of the running jokes is one of the ducks, who is huge, they're big, bulky bruiser guy, is a Zen master. So every now and then he'll just put out a weird Zen adjacent one-liner before he beats up someone. I remember he skates up next to somebody in a hockey game and says, "You are one with the wall," and then smacks him into the side.
No, if I was a bit more into Zen things, I'd be all about that.
Anyway, how sharper than a serpent's tooth?
Yes. So do we have any guest voices this week?
Not that I could find.
Nope. That's all I can find as well.
James Doohan. Think he might actually also make cat noises in this one.
Nice. Somebody's got to do it. Majel Blair can't do it all, so.
Okay, so how sharper than a serpent's tooth? Not the Mighty Ducks.
Yes.
The feathers. There are feathers.
Yes.
And aliens.
Aliens.
Winged aliens.
Lots of flapping.
So the Enterprise is tracking a mysterious probe that approached the Federation out of unknown space, scanned Earth's system, transmitted some sort of data back the way it came, and self-destructed before anyone could get to it.
So already I really kind of like this setup here, because it's okay, so somebody's coming to look at it, so we should maybe go check this out. This seems like this is, something that we should be investigating right now, as opposed to, well, it's been 20 years since we've looked at this planet. We're going to go wander by and find out everything's horrible.
Yeah, it is they are actually investigating something in this one. They're being driven. It's not just, we're on a routine survey mission and, oh no, snake gods.
Yes.
Today the ship is piloted by new crew member Mr. Walking Bear.
Hey, Mr. Walking Bear. How are you doing?
Who's replacing Sulu for this episode. Apparently you're only allowed to have one minority on the bridge at a time.
Oh, that's 2 if you count Uhura.
That's 2. Uhura is here. So the trail is growing a bit faint when a strange ship, unlike anything they've ever seen, appeared. It's surrounded by a large energy field that makes it difficult to see, but it seems to be made from some sort of advanced crystalline ceramics. Which
is actually kind of fitting, because ceramics were kind of a big thing in the Mesoamerican eras.
I know, this one I actually like, which we'll get to, but the ceramic ship, I feel, is one of the only things that makes sense. I really like some of the details they have in this episode.
Alternatively, I could have referenced the space shuttle.
That's true. Was made of super advanced ceramics.
Yes. It's we're going to create a material that just comes, deals with all the heat and everything's fine. Excellent.
So as they approach, the Enterprise suddenly loses speed as if they smacked into a wall in space, which they did because the ship is now trapped in a solid but flexible force field, which is why they didn't smack into it at warp speed and die instantly.
Yeah, it's basically they got bubbled, or in D&D terms, someone threw a bead of force at them.
So the alien ship approaches them, hits them with some sort of indeterminate beam scanner weapon something.
It is the beam of annoyance.
Yeah. And they try to fire back, but their phasers can't get through the force field doodah. The alien ship's energy field changes and turns into what appears to be a giant winged serpent, unlike anything anyone has ever seen, except for Walking Bear, who sees it and immediately goes, "Hey, that's Kukulkan."
Oh, cool. The rest of the people here don't know what that is. Could you fill us in a little bit, please?
Well, first, that's apparently the right answer, because Kukulkan immediately answers and goes like, "Hey, I thought you'd all forgotten me."
Hey, what's up? We're going to get informed here, but bravo for not being ignorant fools that I have to kill here. So good job on you guys.
I mean, mostly it's more like, "You have forsaken me and forgotten me, puny mortals. You all deserve to die, but because one of you remembers, you get one chance to live."
Hooray!
And because apparently they can't just trust the guy who they just said is right, Spot gets into the computer and confirms that Kukulkan was a winged serpent god from ancient Mayan and Aztec legends who came from the sky bearing knowledge.
Cool. It's a good thing that Wikipedia is still a thing in the future, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, without much prelude here, McCoy, Scotty, Walking Bear, and Kirk disappear.
Zap. These specific crew members are now elsewhere.
Also, I get Walking Bear. I get Kirk, because, they always bring Kirk. What does Scotty and McCoy have to do with it?
So, at the time, Scotty was just being himself, aka the most competent member of the crew. Thus, he was essentially, needed to be taken as well. McCoy was in the process of, dealing with someone who got, slightly scuffed up during the whole, we're now being stalked by a giant force field sort of bubble thing. And he's just kind of being ornery, so maybe Kukulkan is like, all right, this person's chewing somebody out, so he might be important. I'm going to grab him too.
So they're all transported to a large empty blue room.
Well, I hope we're not trapped here forever, because this is going to get, quite depressing.
Void space.
Also, it's blue. Blue, depressed, sadness, all that. Yes.
Then Kukulkan says that he's going to show them the seeds that he has shown Earth before, and they need to find their purpose. He transforms the room into a giant Mesoamerican city with a large central pyramid.
Wait a moment, is this a holodeck?
Probably.
Okay.
The city combines a mixture of cultures, from Egyptian obelisks to Chinese gateways that they don't recognize.
Yes.
They point at a definitely Chinese gateway with a dragon on top and go, "I don't know what that is. This looks Egyptian, though."
Yeah, so, ancient Egypt, we totally get, even much more recent China, East Asia, not so much, apparently.
So Walking Bear remembers that before Kukulkan left, the Maya were given a incredibly accurate calendar and instructed to lay out a city in accordance with the calendar's yearly cycles. And on the day when it was finished, Kukulkan would return, but they finished the city and he never did. Because Kukulkan's a flake.
Yeah. So they built your city here. Are you going to drop by again, or are you just going to send a probe after a number of centuries?
Yeah, probably that.
Yeah.
Also, I know this isn't important at all, because they certainly don't pronounce this right in this episode. I'm pretty sure Kukulkan has a gut stop in it somewhere, because most ancient Mesoamerican languages had some version of that, but that's not a thing in modern English or European languages, so I have no idea how one is supposed to pronounce this correctly, and I couldn't do it if I did.
We could always go with, Kukulkan is sort of the Yucatan era region name for the god. We could always try for the Kichi Maya pronunciation. Ubats.
That's kind of fun.
I'm probably mispronouncing that horribly, but that's the best I could do.
So Kirk theorizes that Kukulkan visited lots of Earth cultures and gave them each some of the knowledge and hoped that they would fulfill his expectations of whatever they were trying to do. And the city itself is probably some sort of giant key, probably a signaling device that was supposed to call him back, but they never completed it correctly. So Kirk climbs up to the pyramid to get a better view while the crew explore around all of the edges.
So basically it's sort of a twist on Ancient Aliens sort of stuff. but instead of us being fully enlightened and, we kind of just half-ass everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ancient aliens that the aliens didn't do their job very well.
So,
So at the top of the pyramid, Kirk finds an inlaid table with a winged serpent design. And on the ground, Scotty and Walking Bear find several snake-headed pillars that rotate. Kirk has them all rotate the serpents to face the top of the pyramid in what probably inspired a lot of Legend of Zelda dungeon puzzles, because the snake heads reflect the sun to the top of the pyramid and focus in on the table.
and I could definitely hear in my head the da-da-da-da sound from various Zelda games.
Yeah. This is like every version of the Shadow Temple or Spirit Temple.
Have to align the lights so that the thing activates and you can see the light of the darkness and stuff like that.
See, the problem is the ancient Maya never found the mirror shield.
That would have made things so much easier.
So all of the lights combine in Captain Planet.
Well, there's only 4 of them. Wait, hard is the friends we made along the way. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. So the entire city is an amplifying signal device, and Kukulkan is pleased that they have figured out that they needed to turn the serpent heads, which, no one did this? Or is it just because they only had gold and hadn't invented bronze and so couldn't have good mirrors?
Probably. Well, we'll go with that.
I suppose you could make a pretty good mirror out of highly polished gold because they were very accomplished goldsmiths in Mesoamerica, but they didn't discover bronze in the Americas. They did have copper working. No one had silver mirrors at this point in history. But anyway, they never figured out that they should turn the serpent heads.
Yeah, so, I guess, maybe they also put them in the wrong place, and thus maybe when they did try to turn them, it didn't work or something like that, or they didn't have the special doohickey to transmit light into some sort of super subspace signal to deep space to contact, the Mr. Serpent guy here, or what? I don't know.
So, Kukulkan decides that he's going to appear before them, and is a large blue serpent with big red rings.
So, I have to say that this design is a mix of awesome and very silly.
Yeah.
And I'm so here for it.
He likes that they figured out their thing, but he's still upset that they tried to shoot him.
Okay, so you tried to murder me, so what's up?
And he's also upset that they've forgotten about him, and now it's his job to educate them all because they've forgotten about his teachings and all that. So he transports them to his laboratory.
Some sort of secret lair laboratory of experimentation. Are they going to be dissected?
This is a big zoo room, basically.
Oh.
It's filled with strange creatures in glass jars, including something called a Capella power cat, which is apparently a cross between a tiger and an electric eel.
Big fluffy kitty wolf thing with spines.
And it's impossible to keep in captivity, except for Kukulkan got a young one, because it teaches young things, like humans were all young and children when he found us. Haha.
But now the big sleepy kitty's nice and cute.
But also apparently all these creatures are just kept in docility by having a vision of their native habitat beamed into their brains, so they don't actually know they're in captivity because they're in itty tiny tubes.
So I have to question what's the point of this?
He just likes to keep pets, and he doesn't have a lot of space. It's like anyone who lives in a small apartment can figure this out. Like, you have to keep your hamster in a tiny tube and beam visions of a hamster habitat into its brain.
The endless expanses of the hamster world is now in its brain directly.
It's a very, very convenient space-saving way to keep pets.
Yes. It's the wave of the future, man.
So, Kukulkan apparently came from a race that destroyed itself millennia ago, and he fears that other races will do this as well.
Oh, I guess your heart's in the right place there.
So what he did was visit ancient Earth to try to teach them the ways of peace and keep them off of the road to war and self-destruction. He expected to return when summoned, but, that didn't happen. So his dream of teaching peace to the masses is dead, and it's all your fault, Kirk.
Kirk, specifically, yes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Spock has had an epiphany, or an epiphany, even, that if you push and pull on the force bubble thingy at the same time, it can only respond to one or the other, therefore it will break. So he uses the tractor beam to pull on the force bubble, at the same time as blasting the ship through it, and it breaks.
But they also have to go to warp at the right time in order to pop it. It's all sort of an operation, and they end up like, we're going to end up light years away, so be prepared for that, guys.
So Kukulkan is furious that the Enterprise escaped, and he's now just going to destroy the ship and get it over with. Kirk decides that they should let out the super dangerous electric cat thing as a distraction to give the Enterprise time to get in close and fire on the ship.
Hopefully the super dangerous cat thing doesn't just murder us and stuff. That would be inconvenient.
So this works, and the Enterprise shoots Kukulkan's ship, which apparently disables the thingy that he was using to control the animals.
That's kind of awkward.
So now Kukulkan can no longer control the animals, and the Power Cat is attacking him.
Oh no. Our snaky floaty boy is in trouble.
So Kirk takes a tranquilizer hypospray from McCoy's medkit and stabs the cat and gets bzzed.
Apparently there's thousands of volts just kind of coursing through this critter here, and, well, he just made close contact with that.
But he does succeed in both calming it down and not being hurt.
And now, it should be pointed out the Capellan kitty here is, like, has plasma shock stuff going on around it actively. So that actually suggests there might be a big deal of current going through this critter. So really, Kirk should be dead at this point. But
probably. You don't know what these uniforms are made of. People keep taking like energy blasts to the chest and like sometimes being fine. So maybe they wove some actual like power distributing armor into these outfits. That would be a good idea, probably.
Yeah. That would be a fantastic idea.
So now that he has saved Kukulkan, Kirk can plead his case that despite being dangerous, savage, super dangerous, dangerous animals, no one's disputing that humans are the most dangerous race in the entire galaxy. And we know this, and it's an undisputed fact. We have minds and can control our super dangerous impulses, so it's fine.
Oh, this is kind of a thing we've had crop up before in Star Trek, where Kirk's like, we might be, horrible critters that are going to be like, have compulsions to murder everyone. But you know what? We've decided not to do that today. So,
yep.
Hooray.
This is another one of those like, oh my god, you are the most brutal race in the galaxy. We know.
Yeah. What of it?
But because humans are sentient life and intelligent life should be allowed to flourish, we should be able to succeed or fail on our own as intelligent, independent life forms, instead of being controlled by an exterior force. Kukulkan still wants to teach, but Kirk goes, we don't need you anymore. You came to us when we were young and stupid, but now we have spaceships, which proves we're cool.
Yeah, wait, Kirk, if you, like, accept his offer, like, but on, like, some reasonable terms, like, don't just murder us randomly sort of terms here, maybe you can get some cool stuff out of the deal.
Nope, we can't even consider working with you. It was fine when you taught the ancient Mayans how to build giant signaling device doodahs, but how dare you try to give us your technology now, Mr. Snake God?
Is it because you want me to worship you? I want you to worship me. Is that it, guys? Come on. Be a bro.
So Kukulkan agrees to let them all go. Back on the ship, they find so many snake god things that were probably Kukulkan. Like dragons, Quetzalcoatl, various snake dudes.
Yep.
What's his face? The snake that guards the Yggdrasil, world eater.
You got yourself like a Midgard serpent or something like that?
Yeah, that dude. They don't mention him, but I'm thinking through snake gods.
There's a bunch of them. I like the Epep or the Rutra. Wyverns, there we go. I can pronounce that one.
McCoy asks if the Vulcans have any legends about ancient alien visitors like this, but in fact the Vulcans know they were visited by ancient aliens beings because they left much smarter than they arrived.
Well, good on you, Spock and the Vulcans there. Just being all fancy again.
It's my favorite Vulcan line in the thing. It's like, oh yes, we did have ancient aliens. They learned a lot.
Now, there's also maybe some comparison for what, Vulcans consider ancient at this point in time. Because, like, 1,000 years before this point in time in the Star Trek, universe there, Vulcan already had nuclear weapons and had already had their basically their third world war, effectively. And so if that's considered ancient, then maybe the aliens showed up after that and were like, so we're here to be all like powerful gods here, and the Vulcans are like, oh, you guys have no idea.
Like, we've already discovered logic. Go away.
Yeah, so we're going to teach you some stuff, and then you're going to go on your merry way, and it's going to be fine.
So Kirk laments about being thankless children, gives us the titular Shakespeare quote, and then they leave. The end.
The end.
Also, this just whole exchange with the Vulcan alien thing makes me now wonder about the whole Klingon story of how they killed their gods because they were an inconvenience.
Yes. They're more trouble than they were worth.
So, like, if all the gods are ancient aliens, that suggests some things about Klingon.
Well, also in the Klingon backstory, they were apparently like conquered or enslaved or something like that by some crazy alien race that like spanned massive parts of the galaxy at one point. So maybe there's some crossover there between their gods and these guys. I forget the name of them, but
maybe, or the slaver dudes.
Maybe. So in other words, depending on what area of the galaxy or what planet or I guess what shape of your ears you were on, going on here, the ancient aliens that popped up everywhere had different reactions to you, or you had different reactions to them. I guess that kind of goes into a little bit of a psychology of alien beings, how they would treat a being that would show up and say, "I'm your god," and well, we don't think like that, so we're gonna not treat you like a god, but we're going to treat you like some person who's showing up for a verbal debate, or alternatively, we're going to stab you. So, hooray!
Ah, the aliens are supposed to be nice, right? So,
yeah.
So we've definitely talked about ancient alien stuff before. It's been around for a bit, didn't get really popular until sort of Chariots of Fire came out a while back.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, kind of... It's basically just a way to explain why non-white civilizations made any kind of technological progress.
Which is, maybe they just were able to also make technological progress like white people. But we can't have that because, look over there.
Yeah. So yeah, we've gone over some of this before. It was originally it came about in sort of the 1950s. As an idea, but really didn't gain a lot of support until sort of the 1980s, and then it just sort of took off from there. But the basic idea behind all ancient alien, ancient astronaut things is essentially a incredibly literalistic reading of mythology, but just replacing any godlike entity or hero figure with an alien.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, ancient alien theories believe in a literal interpretation of things like the Bible, but with aliens instead of gods and angels.
So it is, I guess, to a certain extent, a very limiting sort of way to interpret things, because if it already excludes a whole bunch of other interpretations by saying, okay, this is a thing that actually for sure happened exactly as being described. How do I make that make sense given the other things I assume about the world? As opposed to say, this is maybe metaphorical, or someone told somebody else who told this story, which then was exaggerated, then finally someone wrote it down. Or any other sort of alternative explanations for why, things were sort of laid out in the mythology as they were.
Yeah, it's a very weird that it has such a scientific veneer, since the literal interpretation of mythologies precludes a lot of what we actually have learned about history and paleontology.
Yes.
They even, in a lot of various writings, they will take even a literal interpretation of something like the legend of King Arthur, who was definitely not a historical figure in any regard.
Yes. King Arthur is sort of one of those characters that it's like, okay, maybe there was at some point some guy named Arthur, but that's sort of it as far as maybe attachment to reality, and everything else that's being attributed to him has been fairly much manufactured or borrowed from other sources.
Now, the very interesting thing when you get to Mesoamerican cultures, not only are they definitely a target for this kind of ancient aliens thing because they built pyramids, and who could ever think of stacking things in progressively smaller stacks the way architecture functions? Or, just what happens when you pile dirt on top of dirt.
Yes. We could make ourselves a little mountain here. But no, that's impossible. Why would anyone ever do that?
You made a mountain out of molehills.
Also, some of the cultures of Mesoamerica are also prone to, we need to expand our temple complex here, but we can't really expand out because we're now surrounded by cities suddenly. We'll just keep building up too. So yeah, there's also that.
They also built these things on top of literal lakes. Like we do not I want to be clear. Like I'm going to talk about the ancient alien theory stuff, but like the architecture of Mesoamerica was incredible. We don't know how to do some of this stuff now.
Yes. But they were there. They figured it out. And they're like, yeah, we're going to be, turning this bit of territory into a kind of swinging city here. And sure, it used to be lakefront property all over there, but now it's urban development.
So a particularly interesting twist that you get in Mesoamerican cultures, it's akin to a sort of ancient aliens myth, but it's basically an ancient Europeans myth. Especially with Quetzalcoatl in particular, because of the serpent imagery. And in this episode, they reference that Quetzalcoatl was probably another version of Kukulkan. I've been having trouble tracking down the exact etymology of the various gods and which ones went to which culture because Mesoamerica is a bit of a mess.
Yes. Well, I guess the general rule of thumb is to remember, Olmecs were super early. Mayans were sort of like, middle era, and then Aztecs were a bit later, though the Maya were still technically around, but just not as well organized.
Yeah, and the only, actual history we have, the only real written history we have from Central and South American cultures at all was written several hundred years after the fact by a mixed-race priest historian, and half of the book was lost in a shipwreck. So
yes, so there's some information missing, and it might not be from the most reliable of sources. Because a whole let's learn about this culture so it can help them become Christians faster is sort of part of the motivation.
Yeah. So there's sort of a parallel myth to the ancient aliens thing that ancient Vikings, who we know traveled to North America at various points, made it to Central and South America, were met by the ancient Mesoamerican cultures, interpreted as gods, and then later when the Spanish showed up, they were also interpreted as gods because of this continued myth. That is completely apocryphal. The Spanish were never welcomed as gods. They were welcomed as visiting dignitaries who then later betrayed the king in a pretty cowardly move.
Well, the Spanish were probably like, yeah, we are pretty badass. They're clearly seeing us as gods, even though we have no evidence for it.
Also, just to throw this out there, because I saw this in a bad book a while back, that there's this whole thing that the Spanish were able to take over because they had superior technology. That's not entirely accurate. The Spanish conquered the kingdom because the king of the time made a particular tactical error.
Yeah, we'll just invite these guys in.
Yeah. He invited them in, and then as a display of force, he had his army march into the celebrations unarmed and with instruments.
We got ourselves a whole bunch of people here going to play you some musical tunes here.
Yeah.
Please don't kill them while they're doing
that. And at that point, the Spanish then very cowardly attack everyone and kidnap the king and force him to convert to Christianity and then later kill him anyway. So yeah, pretty bad.
I hope that's the end of horrible atrocities happening in Mesoamerica. It's not actually.
Yeah,
no.
That would be nice. So again, it's an interesting one. It's a strange one to look at this particular episode because it was written by someone of Native American descent who is more familiar with the cultures that he's talking about, it's still echoing some racist ideas that had been perpetuated to explain away the cultural and technological advancements made by non-white civilizations.
Though I will point out that in Star Trek, at least, there's also similar things that they're doing with white people as well. Because, the whole, who mourns for Adonis sort of, oh, the Greek gods are real?
Yeah, it wasn't quite as codified by this point because, like I said, it didn't reach massive cultural prominence until the 80s.
So I guess I'll give them, marks down for kind of this ridiculous premise here, but increased points slightly for in general Star Trek during this era being slightly less racist about it than they could have been.
Yeah, and Russell Bates specifically said that his original idea for this episode was Mesoamerican Who Mourns for Adonis.
Oh, so that works. Now, I will also point out that Walking Bear says explicitly that he's Comanche, which is actually a culture that was a bit further north than than sort of the Mayans and things like that there. But he does point out that he's someone who's studied cultures throughout the Americas, and that's why he's familiar with Kukulkan.
Yeah, he does say that he's studied a lot of ancient American cultures. Mm-hmm. Comanches were a lot farther north. As far as we know, Aztec and Mayan cultural influence did spread into America through trade networks. The farthest north that we definitely have evidence of cultural exports is in southern Arizona, where there is a Mayan arena, like a ball pit.
Oh, cool.
That was probably a trading hub of the time to bring goods up from Mexico. I believe that they found those trade networks expanding pretty far north. I don't know the exact boundaries, but the ancient American trade routes went all over. Like it's a pretty sophisticated trade network when you actually look at it.
It's sort of one of those things that when folks, especially in the Western world, think about, pre-European civilizations in the Americas, that the sort of vision that we sort of taught at early age in our education system is, all right, we got like longhouses and maybe some cool stuff about confederacies or something like that, as far as tribes coming together, things like that. But there was a lot more than just sort of these local political units here. There was civilizations butting up next to other civilizations, and you got people interacting across lines there. In fact, you talk about the specific cultural exports from Mesoamerica, but there's also language crossover. That Comanche is actually part of the same, the native language there is part of the same language family group as the Aztecs, and so there was definitely a division between the Aztec languages and the Mayan languages. But as far as sort of one bit of culture, overlapping a lot with one with the Mayans, the Aztecs, and then now the Aztecs all the way up to Comanche. So it's sort of a continuum of different sort of traditions, ideas, languages, and everything like that, as well as the the movement of people between these groups in order to sort of help facilitate that. And trade was an essential part of that.
And then we did mention this before, the details that I really love in this episode, which I don't think have been done before. I remember a few episodes back I was complaining about this aspect of Ancient Aliens theory, that the aliens always teach humans how to build with stone. But in this episode, the spaceship is made of ceramics.
Yes. It's like, we're actually going to put our money where our mouth is here, and we're going to ceramic it up here.
And of course, Mesoamerican cultures are masters at ceramic crafts. Like, the stuff that they made is amazing. I went to a museum exhibit a couple of years ago and got to see some stuff that looked like it could have been made yesterday. It was amazing. It had overhanging detail bits and like these very complicated patterns that I have no idea how they got to stick in that kind of way. I have no clue how they would have created this thing, and it was made several thousand years ago.
Yes. Yeah, it's just kind of amazing that there's just this potent craftsmanship there that, when in our very, modern, American, white people sort of view of things, we kind of don't realize is there generally. And that's kind of a shame.
A lot of it was destroyed intentionally, both to just destroy native cultures during the Spanish occupation there and the spread of Christianity. Also, they were incredibly advanced goldsmiths, and a lot of that was taken and melted down for gold exports. And in fact, that is where a lot of the myths of South America being an incredibly gold-rich area come from, because the Spanish came and saw how blatantly everyone was using gold and assumed they must have a great deal of it to be able to display it so prominently. But really, they just valued it as a easy-to-work, pretty metal and didn't have a monetary value system on it, so it was simply used as an ornamental jewelry instead of a sign of power and wealth.
Yeah, and Europeans were like, we're going to have piles of gold and silver sort of in vaults, while the Mayans are like, we're just going to be like decorating stuff with it. That's cool, right?
Also, this thing that I heard, this is just random, it has nothing to do with anything, but I just loved it. When the Spanish were searching for gold throughout South America, they found massive deposits of platinum that they then dumped into the ocean because platinum is too similar to gold density-wise and could be used to forge gold.
So, yeah. Do you happen to know where they dumped those platinum deposits? I might want to go pay that area a visit for unrelated reasons.
So they found more platinum than gold, but threw it out because it was worthless at the time.
Yes. How things change, So here's something that folks maybe aren't super aware of, but there are folks of Mayan descent that are still alive that, to varying degrees, are still very much steeped in the traditional cultures there, even if they've been modified and pushed to change over time via the whole European settlement stuff. Because when the Spanish and other folks came into Mexico and Central America, most of their focus was on the major cities as far as Christianization, exploitation, running off all their gold, etc., etc. But there's still plenty of small villages outside the major cities and hubs there, where basically they didn't realize they've been conquered for quite some time. Eventually, people would show up and it's like, you should become Christians. They're like, tell us about it, I guess. and so there's still bits and pieces of the old cultures that have been able to be allowed to continue to exist for centuries past the Spanish conquest. Now, they're how similar it is now to what it was 2,000 years ago is very questionable, of course. But it is still kind of neat that there's still some carryover there that, these cultures haven't been totally wiped out, even if, large sections of them have been destroyed.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people mention this for, basically all American, ancient American tribes across both continents, that it's always talked about in the past tense. We always talk about ancient native cultures and ancient Mayan culture, ancient Indian cultures. But these cultures still exist. People are still living. Yes. They're still making modern music and art and other things. We just try to ignore them and pretend they don't exist because there's that whole colonialism thing that we try to forget about.
So I guess this is maybe something when we maybe have more time to go into more details there, to maybe explore the opportunities show up. It's like we're going to be touching upon this culture here. All right, so maybe let's do maybe we could you and me, Gep, we can maybe do a deep dive of something at some point.
Yeah, we should. I mean, I know there's at least one unfortunate native episode coming up when we get to next gen.
Yep.
Lots of them if we ever get to Voyager.
Yes.
That's something that I always thought was weird, especially in the more modern context. Like, I get they were doing a lot of this in the 50s and 60s. A lot, like, it was an interesting thing of like, what if the gods were aliens? Ooh, it's all subversive and things because the gods were gods. But by the time you got to the 80s and 90s, they should have known better.
A little bit.
This is the only way anyone who writes Star Trek knows how to deal with native cultures. Flat out. Like, even when you get to Voyager, and they try to put some representation in there with Chakotay, who is every native culture somehow.
His native culture is miscellaneous.
They still are doing ancient alien stuff. Like, they still have the Native Americans who were transported across the galaxy. Mm-hmm. Like, all this junk. Because they're still just using this exact idea for the last 60 years for some reason.
So to writers of today and the future, could you maybe get onto a different idea, maybe one a little bit more nuanced or, not focused on the same trope?
Yeah, just once I want to see them. Could they give native peoples as much respect as they gave the damn dinosaurs in Voyager?
Yes.
So if they're in another part of the galaxy, let them have been advanced enough that they figured it out and left themselves.
Yeah. I would kind of love to have an episode of Star Trek at some point where it's like, yes, we used to be this obscure culture from Earth, but we were transported away. And now, you people back on Earth seem like, well, now you seem like the children. This is weird.
Yeah, they'll at least once one of these cultures that got super advanced on another planet should come back and you're like, hey, where'd everyone go? This is awkward.
So, do you want to have a moment of depression real quick?
Why not?
All right. So, I'm just talking about how Mayan cultures are still a thing, right?
Yes.
So, guess who was one of the major groups that was harmed during the Guatemalan Civil War?
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So, for those unfamiliar with what that's all about, for several decades, like 36 some years, in the latter half of the 20th century, there's a bit of a dust-up, you could say, to put it very, very, very lightly, between the right-wing government of Guatemala and various sort of left-wing communist rebel groups, and it was very there's definitely a case of everyone kind of being jerk faces here, but the government specifically was very prone to targeting folks that lived a bit outside the cities that maybe people wouldn't complain too much if they disappeared, independent of how actually attached to the guerrillas they were involved with there. And that meant that those Mayan villages and things like that tended to get a lot more of their people murdered for no particular reason. So that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a horrible thing. And once again, it's also another case of what was the U.S. doing during all this? Oh, yes, they were helping the right-wing government with the people that were running the death squads and all that.
Well, it probably got some bananas or something.
Exactly. There was a series of military dictatorships and coups and things like that along the way, but it's definitely a case of, the U.S. just keeps sending the military hardware that they then go and use to kill tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
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 And during the Carter administration, Carter's like, maybe we should pull back on this. The CIA kept still funding them, but at least the military, exports were, reduced and eventually get cut off. But then a few years later, Reagan came into power and it's like, yeah, we're going to go full bore again. Until, Bush Sr. is like, hey, you killed an American? Unacceptable. We're done here. Like, well, I guess we know what our priorities are here. Yeah. So that's terrible. But, that's another thing that maybe we need to be a bit more educated about in American schooling systems, that there's a lot of ancient history and that is important, and we got some version of that generally. Generally, when it came to Europeans are showing up and causing a ruckus. And then we kind of skip over everything that happened since. Both the good, like some of these cultures still had people that survived that pinch point there, to the bad, where there was later times where a lot of them were also wiped out. And some of it within our lifetimes that was going on. So maybe we should be mindful of our actions and what we're doing presently in order to prevent horrible atrocities from happening again. Or stop the ones that are currently happening.
Or we could make money in South America.
Dang it, Zagapwin. Money's not everything.
And as soon as you mentioned Reagan, I knew it was going to turn bad, so...
Oh, Reagan, definitely bad in the 80s, but they're actually way worse in the 60s and 70s, so... Because, you know, they were kind of mostly done with their most of the mass murder by then, I guess. But maybe I've missed something in my reading, so... But anyway, that's our depressing moment for the episode.
Yeah, but once we get super depressing, we usually then skip straight to the tonal disconnect that is the galaxy's favorite game show!
Woo, disconnects! Hey everybody, welcome to the Galaxy's favorite game show, where everyone's been racking up various points here, and we got some prizes to hand out because the episode's coming to an end here, so we better do that before we get to everything wrapped up here. So our first prize, an award of the Elio deity thingamajig, goes to Kukulkan. It's called the Sufficiently Advanced Aliens Prize, which Kukulkan wins for being at least magically powerful enough in some ways, and effectively so for ancient Earth people. Because, he has a spaceship and stuff. So, what does he win, Gepwin?
The giant winged space snake wins the giant winged space mouse to possibly eat and play with.
That's kind of awesome. Where'd you get that, Gepwin?
So, one of the tiny giant space hamsters.
Oh, That's from Baldur's Gate, isn't it?
I mean, it was originally from D&D before it was in Baldur's Gate. But...
Yes. Our second prize is the Space Boot Prize, which goes to Kukulkan's ship for effectively stopping Enterprise perfectly in space so it can't fly anywhere. At least until it figures out, Spock figures out a way to remove the boot. So what does it win, Gepwin?
Well, I think that Spock should win the space axle grinder, which he kind of figured out, but, just have these anyway. Also, just to note, there's plenty of videos online on how you can remove these boots with something as simple as a ballpoint pen, because it's an oppressive part of an oppressive system that's unproportionately targeting those who already don't have the means to sustain themselves, much less pay extra to be able to drive to work.
So yeah, down with boots, everybody. Our third and final prize for this week is the Prime Directive Turnabout, which goes to basically all the humans in this episode for basically going, hey man, you shouldn't be interfering with our culture and stuff, dude. When they're talking to Kukulkan and all that. So what do they win, Gepwin?
They win a seat on the UN Security Council so that they can tell other people to stop interfering with their interfering with people interfering. They're interfering. Block anything that keeps them from interfering.
Stop doing everything, everybody. Forever. Yes.
Most hypocritical award I can think of.
So, maybe this episode was the inspiration for how the Prime Directive was eventually sort of interpreted, maybe. Which would be kind of interesting legacy here, but I don't know for certain. So, take us away, Gepwin.
Yes, thank you for all of those amazing prizes. Thank you to our contestants, and thank you all for indulging the weirdness that is the Galaxy's favorite game show!
So, do you want to get small again?
Yeah, are we getting small again? Are we going into a clock? What's happening?
Yes, Counter Clock Incident is the next episode.
Yep, the series finale.
Yes, the final episode of Star Trek the Animated Series. The last bit of animated Star Trek, unless you count CG effects until Lower Decks.
Yeah, quite a while.
Yeah, decades. And it may involve some age regression.
Yeah, let's see. Dude who designed medical tools. Retirement, something, something. Ship flies into a supernova. That's fun.
Hooray!
Oh, is this the first time that they warp around a star to go back in time? Or did they do that
Did we
before?
already do
Didn't
something
they?
like that?
Yeah, they already did that. They do that a lot, and then they forget maybe they fixed how warp drives work in TNG.
So, that was used to be a thing, but we figured out that it was impossible, so we stopped doing it. What? Yeah, there's I remember bits and pieces of this one, but older fellow tries to become young again, and it also affects everybody else at the ship. So, like 10-year-old Spock at the end needs to be like solving things because everyone else are actual babies. So
Okay, that's fine. That could be fine. Interesting. I guess just because they wanted to reuse the model they had for young Spock already.
Maybe.
We'll see. All right, let's see how lazy the animation gets in the final episode of the animated series next time on Watchers of Tomorrow.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Star Trek babies, we make our dreams come true. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that is now, no longer exists.